One of the projects he was working on at the time when the FAA was in its precursors being set up, they had to have a navigational system, navigational channels, if you want to call them that, the navigational routes, wherein a plane could go from the area of one transmitting system into the next transmitting system and not have a problem with the phasing of the signals. This problem was dumped in Tesla's lap. How do you design a master oscillator and a master frequency control system so that all of the systems around the world will all be operating in total unison and totally synchronized? That was a major problem. Synchronizing systems around the planet, which nobody had a concept of how to do it. Hey, Tesla, maybe you can solve this one for us. And he did. The zero-time reference generator that Tesla designed established a link to the zero-time reference to the center of the galaxy. The zero-time reference generator. That was a very special piece of equipment, but basically the zero-time reference generator is something which Tesla designed in the 20s, which became very useful for this project because it established a link to the zero-time reference to the center of the galaxy. But remember, Tesla did things far beyond anything possible. And with a theoretical study, like Tesla engaged in these things, can you do this, can you do that? It was sort of a mental challenge to him. A, can you make an object invisible? B, can you get free power from nowheres? He was quite successful at A and B. And what he did at the time was in one of the projects he was working on at the time when the FAA was in its precursors being set up, they had to have a navigational system, navigational channels, if you want to call them that, the navigational routes, wherein a plane could go from the area of one transmitting system into the next transmitting system into the next and not have a problem with the phasing of the signals. This was a problem which was dumped in Tesla's lap. How do you design a master oscillator and a master frequency control system so that all of the systems around the world will all be operating in total unison and totally synchronized? That was a major problem. We were talking about synchronizing systems around the planet, which nobody had a concept of how the blazes you're going to do it. Hey, Tesla, maybe you can solve this one for us. And he did. You set up in a standard 19-inch rack box a motor operating off the AC line at 60 hertz and a generator system which generates a certain series of frequencies, and there is a feedback coupling between them, and there's a mechanical coupling, and nobody can fully explain to this day how the system works. Tesla could easily, in terms of the physical hardware. It is something which is very hard to explain. I've had units in my hands. I still use them, and because later on I found them still being used. The FAA was still using them in the 60s. They're probably still using them today. At a certain point, the motor and generator system lock together. You can hear it wind up, and then it goes and locks into something, and nobody knows what it is, but you come out of the toothed wheel, which is on the back of the generator. A series of generating systems involving tooth wheels and magnetic coil pickups. The basic stable frequencies for the ILS system, 90 hertz, 150 hertz, divide down to 30, and a couple of other frequencies, including, I believe, 1 kilohertz. These things, these frequencies, are an absolute phase lock from every system that exists around the planet, no matter where it's physically located, and there's no electrical connection between the physical location of one transmitter to the next transmitter. They're locked to what is called the zero-time reference of the entire galaxy. And how Tesla figured that one out, nobody knows.
Nikola Tesla discovered a form of energy that he found was latent and pervasive throughout the entire physical universe. He called it radiant energy. He kept it secret. He had been experimenting with it. Radiant energy is not the ball lightning that he was throwing around at Andrew Carnegie and Mark Twain and some of his other friends. When you array radiant energy and somebody jumps through it, their inertia opens up a vortal tunnel in time-space. There is no transformation of the individual, and the individual does not have to be traveling at the speed of light. The only speed qualification was that when we jumped through the field of radiant energy, we had to be traveling at a meter per second, or whatever part of us didn't get through that field of energy within a meter per second would be lost. We would be dismembered if we didn't leap through very quickly with our limbs crunched up in front of us. In fact, there was a mishap when I was a child on the project. One of the boys teleporting with us to Santa Fe arrived standing in a public fountain with 3 inches of water and was effectively lost his feet because the specific gravity of the water was greater than the air around us, and what was below the surface of the water arrived a split second later, and he essentially slid off his ankles. And when I ran past his location, I could see his feet in the fountain, and he was writhing on the ground with stumps for feet. I mean, I visited the year 2045.
In the future?
And in that 2045, a time that today is only 30 years in the future,
We'll travel to incredible places with
Tesla teleportation was so ubiquitous
the help of magical technology.
that teleport stations are as commonplace as elevators are in our civilization.
In the future, we'll travel to incredible places with the help of magical technology.
In fact, the Tesla teleporter Curtiss Wright had kind of a double thick plug and
Like a 220.
yeah, an outlet on the wall that you might run, let's say, a small drill press or lathe with. It wasn't even industrial size. It was like what you might have in your garage to power
So it'd be like we could have home models.
your saw. Yeah. And so it was not energy intensive, and yet the power of the radiant energy was incredible. It was numerous orders of magnitude above the combustion of fuel, of fossil fuels, to power, let's say, a commercial airliner, because the distance between Woodridge, New Jersey and Santa Fe, New Mexico is 2,005 miles, and we were reaching that in 3 to 5 seconds with the power that was being derived from a small, home appliance size plug-in and outlet. It's been concealed from the American people that Tesla's greatest contribution to applied science was the discovery of radiant energy that allows us to bend time-space to the point of opening tunnels up in it through which we can pass uninjured across great distances.
So the radiant energy, is that similar to what people talk about like dark matter or antimatter?
I think the most intelligent thing I found was in the works of Dr. Walter Russell, and that is that electricity converts space into energy, and negative electricity converts energy into space. In other words, it was the application by Tesla of negative electricity that turned energy into space, namely the Vortal tunnel that was being opened up by the teleporter. Tesla wins. We all know that Nikola Tesla was the greatest applied scientist in the history of our great American civilization. He was more ethical than Westinghouse and Edison. Edison cheated him when he first came to the United States. He cheated Tesla on a bet, a $50,000 prize that Edison had posted for the solution of a technical problem that Tesla came to the United States to tell Edison he had the solution to that problem. He did. Edison cheated him out of that $50,000 prize. There was the subversion of Tesla in the battle between direct and alternating current, and the underfunding of him. They bankrupted him. That this great Slavic American immigrant inventor does become the principal figure in our human civilization. He invented the technology, the civic infrastructure of the 21st century. Tesla wins.
These documents were owned by Oscar Schneider while he was in office working for the United States Navy in the 1950s. During this time, the rumored Philadelphia experiment took place, and perhaps these documents are the smoking gun that prove, in fact, the Philadelphia experiment did occur. The first document details an autopsy report on one of the crew members from the Philadelphia experiment.
One of the letters that Oscar wrote about the autopsy of the Philadelphia experiment crew members, the items that he was pulling out of their back of their eyes, and their arms and their legs, these little things that looked like transistors. It's exactly what they were. They were little surveillance items that were placed into the bodies of the Philadelphia experiment crew members.
In this letter, it is addressed to Lieutenant Nathan F. Twining. Oscar seems to report on the vessel, which Twining's staff couldn't find. Furthermore, it includes an order from J. Edgar Hoover to have all personnel undergo psychological testing. The third letter addresses Edward Condon. Edward Condon is well known for his involvement explaining away all UFO phenomenon as simply optical illusions. However, in this fourth and final letter, Oscar Schneider seems to be reporting to Edward that 7 Philadelphia Project experiencers had escaped from a psych ward that Oscar was holding and testing them at. He goes on to say that J. Edgar had declared the incident classified as a 1A prime directive, possibly meaning something in regards to a top-secret security clearance, finishing this letter with a reference to Nikola Tesla's spatial analyzer. This is significant because Nikola Tesla has always been known to be involved with the design of the machine which would create the Philadelphia experiment's invisible technology. Condon, having been known most notoriously as the leading UFO debunker of his time, paved the way for secrecy and cover-ups in this realm that we study today.